What if the thing sitting in your kitchen right now could quietly change how your body fights back every single morning? 10 minutes, 1 clove of garlic, 1 spoon of honey. That's all it takes to start something most people never notice. Before we go any further, do one small thing for me. Tap that like button right now. Not for me, but so this video reaches someone in your family who really needs to see it. Hit subscribe if you're new here and send this to the one person you know who's always tired, always catching colds, always saying, I don't know why I feel this way lately. That one share might matter more than you think. Now let's slow down and actually look at this properly, because most people rush past it without ever understanding what's really going on. You've probably seen garlic and honey mentioned somewhere before. Maybe your grandmother made something like it. Maybe you scrolled past a video like this one and didn't stop to watch. Most people don't. They assume it's just another kitchen myth, something old people repeat without any real reason behind it. But here's what's strange. This exact combination, garlic and honey, shows up again and again across cultures that never had any contact with each other. Ancient traders in the Mediterranean used it. Villages in Eastern Europe used it. Healers in parts of Asia used it too, long before anyone had a microscope to explain why it worked. When completely separate groups of people, thousands of miles apart, keep landing on the same 2 ingredients without ever comparing notes, that's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. And patterns like that are usually worth paying attention to. So today, we're not just going to talk about garlic and honey in a vague, general way. We're going to walk through exactly what happens minute by minute when you combine them, and why the 10th minute in particular seems to be the turning point that most people completely miss. Now, let's start with the basics, because understanding the why makes the what so much more interesting. Honey, on its own, is one of the few foods that almost never spoils. Archaeologists have found jars of honey in ancient tombs that were still edible after thousands of years, sealed away and untouched by time. That's because honey is low in moisture and slightly acidic, which makes it a hostile place for bacteria to survive in. It's been used for centuries to help preserve food, soothe irritated throats, and even dress small wounds before modern bandages existed. Garlic, on the other hand, is almost the complete opposite. It's sharp, it's reactive, and the moment you cut or crush it, it starts releasing a compound that gives it that strong smell and bold taste. This compound doesn't really exist in the whole uncut clove sitting quietly in your kitchen drawer. It only forms the instant the garlic is damaged, almost like a chemical alarm system the plant uses to defend itself against threats. In a strange way, garlic is most powerful exactly at the moment it's under attack. So on one side, you have something calm, thick, and almost eternal. On the other, you have something sharp, reactive, and fully alive the second you touch it. When you put them together, you're not just mixing 2 flavors on a spoon. You're starting a quiet reaction between 2 very different kinds of substances. And that reaction is exactly what we're going to watch unfold, minute by minute, step by step. This matters more than it might seem at first. If you're over 50, you've probably already noticed small changes creeping in that used to feel impossible. Colds that seem to catch you one after another, almost like your body forgot how to fight them off the way it used to. Mornings where you wake up tired even after a full night's sleep, as if the rest never fully landed. A quiet feeling, somewhere in the back of your mind, that your body just isn't keeping up the way it once did, even though nothing specific seems wrong. If any of that sounds familiar, keep watching, because the next few minutes might explain something you've been feeling for a while without ever having the words for it. Let's begin the clock. In the first minute, you take a clove of garlic, gently press or score it so it's slightly broken open, and drop it into a spoonful of honey. At this point, almost nothing seems to be happening. It looks like a plain garlic clove sitting in a spoon of honey. Nothing more, nothing dramatic. But underneath the surface, the moment the garlic's outer layer breaks, that sharpened compound we just talked about starts leaking out into the honey surrounding it. The 2 substances have officially met each other now, even if your eyes can't tell yet. The door has been opened, even if nothing seems to be passing through it just yet. By the 2nd and 3rd minute, you'll usually start to notice tiny bubbles forming around the clove. If you've never seen this before, it can look a little strange, almost like the honey is quietly fizzing on its own. Don't worry, nothing has gone wrong here. This is simply moisture and natural juices moving out of the garlic and meeting the thick honey surrounding it. The more the clove releases, the more those small bubbles multiply around it. It's a visible sign that the 2 ingredients are actively exchanging with each other, not just sitting side by side, pretending to be neighbors. It helps to think of honey as a closed door, sitting quietly, patiently, doing nothing on its own. Garlic is the key. On its own, each one simply sits in your kitchen doing its own separate job, honey in its jar, garlic in its bowl, never interacting with each other at all. But the second that key touches the lock, something different starts to happen, something that neither ingredient could ever create by itself. That's really what this whole process is about, 2 ordinary things. Becoming something neither one could be alone. Here's something worth trying yourself, right in your own kitchen. So this doesn't feel like just another video you watched and forgot. Around the 5th minute, take a clean spoon and gently touch the honey close to the garlic clove. Then touch the honey on the opposite side of the jar with that same spoon. In many cases, you'll feel a small but noticeable difference. The honey nearest the clove often feels slightly thinner, slightly looser than the honey sitting further away. It's subtle, and it won't be identical every single time, since different types of honey behave differently depending on their thickness and how warm your kitchen happens to be that day. But when you notice it, it's a small, satisfying confirmation that something real is genuinely happening right in front of you, not just something you're imagining because a video told you to look for it. Now here's where most people get something completely backwards, and it happens right around the 7th minute. A lot of people assume that once the garlic sits in the honey for a while, the honey basically drinks everything useful out of the clove, leaving behind a dry, useless husk that eventually gets scraped out and thrown in the trash without a second thought. That idea feels logical enough on the surface, but it's actually the exact opposite of what's really going on underneath. By the 7th minute, the clove hasn't been drained at all. If anything, this is the moment when the garlic and the honey are the most evenly blended with each other, sharing everything back and forth, rather than one simply taking from the other. Neither one has won anything. They've simply merged into a single mixture, offering each other what they have. Which means that soft piece of garlic sitting at the bottom of the jar, the one so many people scoop out and throw straight into the bin, might actually be one of the most valuable parts of the entire process. This is usually the exact point where people hesitate. They see the bubbles slowing down, they smell the air shifting into something new, and something in them quietly pauses. Not because anything looks wrong, but because it feels unusual, almost too simple to be doing anything. We're not used to food transforming right in front of us on our own kitchen counter, in real time, in under 10 minutes. It feels like it shouldn't be this easy, this fast, this visible to the naked eye. But that hesitation is only unfamiliarity talking quietly in the background. It is not a warning sign at all. Most people who push past that small pause and actually try it end up doing it again the very next morning. And then the morning after that, until it slowly becomes part of their routine without them even planning for it to. Stick with me, because minute 10 is where everything we've been building toward finally comes together into something worth remembering. We're already deep into this process, and I promise the next part is worth the wait, so don't drift off just yet. But before we get there, let me ask you something honestly. If you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly someone who actually cares about understanding things properly instead of just skimming past them like most people do online. So do me one small favor right now. Drop a single word in the comments below, garlic or honey, whichever one you personally trust more on its own without the other. I read every single comment, and I'm genuinely curious to see which side wins by the end of the day. While you're down there, tap subscribe, because what we're about to cover next changes how a lot of people think about their entire morning routine. All right, let's get back to it. Minute 10. By now, the area surrounding the garlic clove is clearly runnier than the rest of the honey sitting in the jar around it. The bubbles have grown to their largest size yet, and the smell in the air has completely shifted from what it was 10 minutes earlier. It's no longer just honey sitting there. It's no longer just raw garlic either. It's something new entirely, sharper than honey on its own, richer than raw garlic on its own. A blend that only exists because these two ingredients were given exactly enough time to properly meet each other and settle. 10 minutes seems to be the natural sweet spot in this entire process. Long enough for the exchange between garlic and honey to fully develop and settle into something new. Not so long that anything sits out for hours and starts to lose its freshness or its edge. It's not rushed and it's not overdone either. It's just enough time for two separate, unrelated things to quietly become one useful thing you can actually use. But here's the part. Almost everyone gets wrong the moment this waiting period finally ends. Most people stop right here. They either eat the mixture immediately or they don't bother with it at all. And either way, they move on with their day and never really think about it again after that. That's actually the biggest mistake hiding inside this entire process. Because what happens after you actually eat it is where the real, interesting story genuinely begins. Some people who start using this small habit regularly say they notice a difference within the very first day. Often a bit of soothing ease in the throat, especially first thing in the morning right after waking up and before they've had anything else to eat or drink. Others report that within a few days, the constant low-level tiredness begins to fade. The kind that doesn't seem to go away even after a full, uninterrupted night's sleep starts to feel a little lighter and a little more manageable. Further along, some people mention that the usual morning stiffness in their joints feels noticeably less intense after about a week or so of consistent daily use. Others say they simply catch fewer colds throughout the following month, or that they feel more like themselves day to day, a little more alert, a little more resilient against whatever's going around at work or at home. None of this is guaranteed, and it's worth saying clearly and honestly right here. Every single body responds differently to something this simple. This isn't a miracle, and it definitely isn't a cure for anything serious or diagnosed. It's a simple, low-cost habit that some people genuinely find useful when they stick with it consistently over time without expecting overnight results. Here's a small challenge for you before we move on. I want you to actually count how many days in a row you can keep this up, starting tomorrow. Not for a week, not for a month, just start counting. Comment your streak below as you go, day 2, day 5, day 12, whatever it is. It's a small thing, but people who track it out loud like that tend to stick with it far longer than people who just quietly try it once and forget. And if you're already subscribed, turn on notifications too, because we're going to keep testing habits like this one. And I don't want you missing the next one. It's worth pausing here to ask a slightly different question. Why would something this simple actually do anything at all? The honest answer is that nobody claims this replaces medicine, and nobody should ever treat it that way. But your body is built to respond to small, consistent signals over time, not just dramatic ones. A single spoonful of anything isn't going to transform your health overnight, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. What seems to happen instead, based on what people report again and again, is smaller and steadier. A habit repeated every single morning becomes a quiet signal your body starts to expect and respond to, the same way regular sleep, regular movement, or regular meals shape how you feel over weeks, not hours. That's really the honest, unglamorous truth behind most of these old kitchen habits. They were never meant to be dramatic. They were meant to be repeated. Now, if you're someone who's always rushing in the morning, trying to get out the door before you're even fully awake, there's a faster version of this whole process worth knowing about. Instead of gently scoring the clove and letting it rest patiently in the honey, you crush the garlic completely and stir it directly into the honey right away. It's quicker, it still gives you something worthwhile. But think of it a bit like the difference between letting food slow cook properly over time versus quickly throwing it in the microwave. You still get a version of the result either way, just not the fuller, richer version you get from patiently waiting out the full 10 minutes. If you have those extra few minutes to spare most mornings, the slower method tends to be the one people actually stick with. Partly because watching that smell and texture quietly change each morning becomes part of the habit itself. Almost satisfying in a strange, small way. On the mornings when you truly don't have the time to wait, the faster version is still far better than skipping the habit entirely and going without it. And here's something worth remembering the next time you're tempted to rush this. The waiting itself seems to matter just as much as the ingredients do. It's tempting, especially on a busy morning, to just stir everything together quickly and swallow it without giving it any real thought. But part of what makes this habit work, at least for the people who stick with it long term, is the pause itself. 10 minutes where you're not scrolling, not rushing, not already thinking about the next thing on your list, just standing in your kitchen, watching something small and quiet happen right in front of you. In a world that rarely slows down for anything, that alone might be worth something. Now, an honest and important note before we continue any further into this. This isn't something everyone should jump into without thinking first, and I'd rather tell you that clearly than leave it out. If you're currently taking blood-thinning medication, such as warfarin, or you're on a regular high dose of aspirin for any reason, talk to your doctor first before adding extra garlic into your daily routine, since garlic may add to that existing blood-thinning effect. And if you already struggle with gastritis, stomach ulcers, or severe acid reflux, eating raw garlic on an empty stomach might not agree with you, and honey unfortunately won't cancel that discomfort out for you. For most other people, though, this remains one of the lowest risks, lowest cost habits you can realistically bring into your kitchen this week. There's also a quieter benefit to this whole process that rarely gets mentioned. Most modern health habits ask something big of you. Cut out entire food groups. Wake up an hour earlier for a workout. Spend money every single month on something in a bottle. This one doesn't ask for any of that. It asks for 10 minutes you are probably going to spend scrolling your phone anyway while your coffee finished brewing. That's part of why it's lasted as long as it has. It doesn't compete with your life. It quietly fits inside it. Let's take a moment now and really think about why this small ritual has managed to survive for so long. Across so many wildly different cultures, without any of them ever comparing notes with each other across oceans and centuries. Before refrigerators existed in every single home and long before pharmacies sat on nearly every street corner the way they do today, people had to rely entirely on what nature gave them and nothing else. Honey wasn't just something sweet to stir into tea on a lazy afternoon. It was one of the only natural substances people had that could actually help preserve food and keep it from spoiling too quickly. Garlic wasn't just a bold flavor added to meals either. It was one of the strongest, most reactive plants people had regular, easy access to. Something they instinctively reached for whenever they felt run down, worn out, or exposed to illness. Across the Mediterranean, across Eastern Europe, across different parts of Asia, completely separate groups of people kept landing on the same pairing, generation after generation, without a single shred of shared communication between any of them. That kind of repeated pattern showing up across entirely unrelated cultures is usually a strong sign that people were noticing something real, even if they didn't have the scientific language back then to fully explain why it worked the way it did. We understand a little more about the why behind it today, sure, but the actual habit itself has barely changed in thousands of years. And maybe that quiet, stubborn consistency is the biggest clue of all hiding in plain sight. Think about how much has genuinely changed in the world since those much earlier days. Refrigeration exists now in nearly every kitchen. Pharmacies exist on almost every corner of every city. We have endless options for supplements, prescriptions, and quick modern fixes for almost anything that ails us. And yet, this same simple combination, 1 clove, 1 spoon, 10 quiet minutes of waiting, is still being passed down quietly from person to person. Still being tried by curious people who stumble across it for the very first time, often completely by accident. If it were truly nothing at all, if it genuinely held zero value whatsoever, it's hard to imagine it surviving this long. Of course, and this really is worth repeating clearly, this isn't about replacing anything your doctor has personally told you to do. It's not a treatment, and it was never meant to be one in the first place. Think of it more like brushing your teeth first thing in the morning or drinking a glass of water before you check your phone. Small, consistent, low-cost actions that quietly support your body over time in the background, without asking very much from you at all. There's something almost humbling, honestly, about that whole idea. In a world absolutely full of expensive supplements, complicated diet plans, and flashy products promising dramatic results. One of the oldest and simplest habits in recorded human history is still sitting quietly in your kitchen right now, waiting patiently for just 10 minutes of your attention tomorrow morning. Think about how many things you've bought over the years that promise to make you feel better or more energetic. Most of them ended up in the back of a cupboard somewhere, half used, mostly forgotten. This one costs less than a cup of coffee and takes less time than scrolling through your phone before bed. It doesn't need marketing because it never needed to be sold to anyone in the first place. It simply needed to be noticed, tried, and repeated. So here's what I'd genuinely like you to actually do instead of just watching this video passively and forgetting about it by tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone or scroll through anything, before the day gets busy and pulls you in 10 different directions. Try this for yourself with your own hands. 1 clove of garlic, gently scored open, 1 spoonful of honey, 10 quiet, uninterrupted minutes while you get ready for your day ahead. Watch the small bubbles form slowly around the clove. Notice the smell in the air begin to change. Then decide for yourself, honestly, whether it feels worth repeating again the next morning. And when you're done trying it, come back here and tell me honestly how it went for you. Write 1 single word in the comments section below. Tried it, or never tried it. I genuinely want to know exactly how many of you already knew about this simple habit long before today's video, and how many of you are discovering it for the very first time right now while watching this. If this video actually gave you something useful today, then do one last thing before you go anywhere else. Share it with someone who could use a little more energy in their life right now, someone who's always tired or always catching colds. Sometimes the most powerful things in life aren't complicated at all. Sometimes they're sitting quietly in a small jar on your kitchen counter right now, waiting patiently just 10 minutes for you to notice. 10 minutes. That's genuinely all this ever asked of you. Not a new diet, not an expensive routine, not another app reminding you to do something you'll quit in 2 weeks. Just a clove, a spoon, and a little patience. People have been doing this for thousands of years, long before any of us were born, and they'll likely still be doing it after we're gone. Maybe it's finally your turn to find out why. And if you found this genuinely helpful today, you already know exactly what to do next. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the very next one, where we uncover another simple habit hiding in plain sight.